Just days ahead of the make-or-break UN climate conference in Glasgow, Scotland, the alarm bells are reaching a crescendo. And this report with a clear message that the world needs to halve annual greenhouse gas emissions in the next 8 years, or else.
Less than 1 week before COP26 in Glasgow, we are still on track for climate catastrophe, even with the last announcements that were made. The 2021 emissions gap report shows that with the present nationally determined contributions and other firm commitments of countries around the world, we are indeed on track for a catastrophic global temperature rise of around 2.7 degrees Celsius. Now, even if the announcements of the last few days will materialize, we would still be on track to clearly more than 2 degrees Celsius.
The report finds that were net zero emission pledges implemented, it could limit warming to around 2.2 degrees Celsius, closer to the well below 2 degrees goal set out in Paris. Around 132 countries have publicly pledged to reach net zero emissions by 2050, while China and Saudi Arabia have pledged to reach the goal only 10 years later in 2060. The UN has pushed for the phasing out of coal by 2030 in OECD countries and by 2040 for all others. The report cautions that net zero plans remain vague and are not always reflected in the nationally determined contributions.
As the title of this year's report puts it, the heat is on. And as the contents of the report show, the leadership we need is off. And far off. We know that humanity's future depends on keeping global temperature increase to 1.5 degrees Celsius by 2030. And we also know that so far, parties to the Paris Agreement are utterly failing to keep this target within reach. And the report also shows that countries are squandering a massive opportunity to invest COVID-19 fiscal and recovery resources in sustainable, cost-saving, planet-saving ways.
And with developed countries falling short of the $100 billion a year goal starting in 2020 to help poorer countries adapt and mitigate, South Africa is leading a developing world charge to see that figure raised to around $750 billion annually by 2025 to undergird the transition.
What matters, obviously, is the effective delivery of the 100 billion. And I've been campaigning for the need for that delivery, and I hope that this step will help move in that direction. It's not enough to have 100 billion. It's necessary also to mobilize more resources from the multilateral development banks, from the private sector, and it is also essential that contributions are more based on grants than loans, and it is also essential that there is an effective balance between adaptation and mitigation.
With a message here that both developed and emerging economies must do the maximum at a time when half measures and hollow promises could have devastating consequences. Sherwin Bryceby's SABC News, New York.